It appeared as though Reynhard Sinaga had a typical life. During the day, he was a committed PhD candidate, fully engaged in his studies at the esteemed University of Leeds, getting ready to turn in his thesis. Sinaga, who came from an affluent Indonesian family, had a stellar academic background and held 2 master's degrees. He was regarded as a well-mannered, charming young man with a bright future ahead of him. But when the lights in Manchester's streets came on at night, he became a vicious predator who committed a string of sex crimes that would rock the country to its core. In a methodical series of assaults spanning over 2 years, Sinaga targeted 206 males, the majority of whom were students, making him the most prolific sexual offender in UK history. For Sinaga, the evening of June 2, 2017, was the start of the end. Jerry, an 18-year-old rugby student, woke up that early morning in excruciating pain and total disorientation. He had gone to a neighborhood bar the night before with some pals, and at some point he passed out. Jerry awoke to find himself lying on a strange bed, being raped by a man who was lying on top of him. He was at first confused and didn't know what was going on, but he soon realized how serious things were. Jerry became enraged and, as an athlete, retaliated by using his strength against his assailant. After pulling himself free, he got to his feet and, furious, pounded Sinaga until he passed out on the ground. Upon the arrival of the police, it was evident that one man, who was small and helpless, was gravely injured, while Jerry, who was larger and did not appear to be seriously damaged, was visibly upset but unharmed. Jerry was charged with serious assault by the police because they believed he was the aggressor, even though they were unaware of the true circumstances. The story appeared easy at first, but as the investigations went on, the cops became increasingly aware of how seriously wrong things were. Sinaga displayed odd conduct and refused to assist the authorities after being brought to the hospital for treatment. He refused and attempted to block officers from accessing his phone when they attempted to unlock it, which raised questions. The cops discovered something startling when they unlocked Sinaga's cell phone. A ton of recorded footage on it showed him allegedly sexually abusing unconscious men. What at first glance seemed to be an assault case involving 2 people swiftly became the catalyst for an enormous investigation that would shake the UK and the entire world. Born in 1983 in the Indonesian island of Sumatra, Reynhard Sinaga was raised in a prosperous family. His father was a prosperous businessman who funded Sinaga's opulent lifestyle overseas with a network of companies he owned in Indonesia, including a private bank. The young Indonesian came to the UK in 2007 to attend the University of Manchester for a master's program in urban planning. She later finished a second master's program in sociology. He started his PhD studies at the University of Leeds in 2012. He lived off the financial support of his family during this time, putting on the front of a diligent and well-respected student. But beneath this picture was a grim reality. A troubling scene was discovered by the police when they searched Sinaga's apartment on Princess Street, a busy Manchester district near the gay village. The apartment was crammed with recording equipment, drugs, and beer bottles. There, Sinaga documented his mistreatment of young males he frequently encountered at nightclubs and pubs. After a night of drinking, he would entice them to his flat by promising them a drink or a place to stay. After giving them sedatives to make them unconscious when they got to his flat, he would sexually abuse them while filming the entire incident with his camera. Over 3 terabytes of films were discovered by the police on his devices, a startling amount of evidence that demonstrated the scope of his crimes. Only 136 of the 206 men who were raped by Sinaga could be recognized. He had been abusing people for years, taking advantage of them without their knowledge. Many of them would be bewildered when they woke up in Sinaga's apartment the following day, thinking that the Indonesian had helped them because they had just had too much to drink. Few believed they had been mistreated and drugged while they were unconscious. It was terrifying how methodical Sinaga was in her actions. His approach was always the same. He stalked his victims around the streets of Manchester, generally in the wee hours of the morning when the guys were most impressionable and the bars and clubs were shutting. He was very selective about who he killed, seeking for people who were obviously inebriated and alone. He would make a pleasant introduction when he approached these individuals, offering to let them rest or get another drink in his flat. There, he would hand them a drink that had already been tampered with to make it seem more sedative-like, and once the victim passed out, Sinaga would start abusing them. During the trials, which took place between 2018 and 2020, Sinaga maintained his composure and even displayed a hint of arrogance despite the overwhelming evidence against him. He never once expressed regret. Conversely, he asserted that the men's consent was obtained for their sex with him, and that their pretense of unconsciousness was really a sexual dream. The video recordings swiftly refuted these assertions, demonstrating the victims' complete slumber, and in some cases even their snoring during the attack. Sinaga persisted in his ridiculous defense, saying that the guys had agreed to everything that had happened, and that they had even loved participating in these role plays. It was difficult for the authorities to identify every victim of Sinaga. When contacted, many of the men were utterly shocked to learn what had happened to them. Until they were approached by the authorities, many of them had no recollection of the abuse and were unaware that they had been victims. One of the first victims whose identity was made public was Daniel, whose story perfectly captures the pain that many of the victims experienced. He related the horrific experience of being forced to see the torture footage after being approached by the police. Daniel, like many others, initially believed he had just had too much to drink. "I never imagined that something like this could have happened to me," he said. The emotional and psychological toll of Sinaga's atrocities was becoming more and more obvious as more victims were found. His attacks had devastated the lives of several of the men he had attacked. Some of them, unable to handle the anguish and shame, decided to hide their identities. Daniel and other individuals chose to openly voice their concerns in the hopes of warning others about the risks they were facing. Reynhard Sinaga was ultimately found guilty of 88 life sentences. He cannot be released until 2060 and may only seek for parole after serving 40 years. Sinaga is an extremely dangerous and manipulative individual, according to the judge overseeing the case, who expressed the hope that he will never be allowed to leave prison. The effects of Sinaga's misdeeds will last for decades, even if he does serve out his term. This case has had a significant impact on the UK, and has raised crucial issues regarding the vulnerability of men in sexual assault situations, a subject that society tends to overlook. The depth of this issue was made evident by the marked rise in reports filed by males who had experienced abuse after Sinaga was arrested. The example also made clear how crucial it is for everyone to exercise greater caution and alertness at night, regardless of gender. Save for his mother, who showed up at one of the hearings, Sinaga's family was mainly absent during his trials. She said she was shocked to learn of the charges her son was charged with, and claimed she had no idea he was gay. Subsequently, Sinaga's father declared he no longer wanted to discuss the subject, and openly acknowledged that his son deserved the sentence he received. The court case was only the start of a protracted healing process for Sinaga's victims. Many of the guys who came into contact with the predator are still dealing with the psychological effects of these crimes, and many are still working to get over the trauma of the abuse. Both the criminal history of the UK and the lives of Reynhard Sinaga's victims have profound and devastating scars from him. His story serves as a sobering reminder that predators can conceal themselves behind even the most honorable of facades, and that even when justice is served, the anguish of those impacted cannot be undone. If you enjoyed watching our videos, feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future videos. See you next time.